When we think about inspiration, we often think about what other people are doing and how they can inspire us. But what if I told you that true, genuine inspiration lives within? I mean, we all have access to screens, and that is a powerful tool of comparison and not inspiration. Filled with work from people all across the globe, we are one click away from the best of everything. I mean, from fashion to glass blowing to that guy that salts a steak like an idiot. I mean, but he's the best at salting it. And all of that wonderfulness that comes across our eyes, it makes us believe that that's where inspiration lives. So we start to devour other people's work on all existing platforms. And as soon as we realize, our heads are emptier than our students' bank accounts. Instead of becoming fulfilled and finding our own path, we become just another average passive consumer that learns to value somebody else's ideas more than their own. I mean, we are hooked up on other people's creativity, and we're also hooked up on that loop of consumerism. And you might think that by being exposed to that much imagery every day, you are somehow stimulating your creativity, but you're actually triggering anxiety, because that's exactly what comparison does to us. It makes us feel like we're not capable of creating something of our own. And it also makes us think that the best that we can be is a version of somebody or a version of somebody else's ideas. And I get that, because when I was in my early 20s and I just finished art school, I wanted to become a chef. But not just like a chef. I wanted to be Nigella Lawson. I wanted to be that effortless, sexy British woman that spoke so softly like a pillow made out of cotton candy. So I had a camera. I started filming myself cooking. I knew how to cook. So I piled up some carton boxes, because I didn't have a tripod at the time. And I filmed myself in my not-so-Nigella Lawson's kitchen in Brooklyn.
Today we're gonna make fruit tart, and
that was my first video ever made. And when I started editing that video, I realized that I was neither Nigella nor me. I mean, our cooking styles were opposites. The other day I saw her using lemon curd from a jar, and I literally show people how to grow a lemon tree before I teach them how to make a lemon meringue pie. So we both had an accent, but my Brazilian one wasn't half as charming as her British. So what was left for me? Well, because I have a practical personality, and I decided that the easiest and less frustrating thing to do would be to embrace who I was and to highlight my own characteristics. I mean, but what was it? Maybe my voice that resembles an abandoned bird in a nest, or my way of always talking with my hands, or maybe my collection of nonsense miniature objects that I've kept forever, or maybe my way of trying to color coordinate the world. I mean, there is no coincidence here. On top of all of that, I was very unexperienced. I mean, not very, just unexperienced. But because of the way I was raised by my parents, I had the self-confidence of Kanye West. So I was like, you know what? I'm gonna do my thing. I'm not gonna try to personate her, and let's see where I get to. And this is what I have created. Thank you. So I want us to close our eyes now, to take a moment of silence, to think about the last great idea we had. I mean, truly, that crazy one, so crazy that you mentally gave up quickly to realize that it was too crazy for this highly beautified, tedious society. Got it? A moment of silence is painful in a world like this, isn't it? I mean, but I believe that original ideas and inspiration will only come through when we are not being overly stimulated. I really believe that. And tell this to that wonderful inspirational board you've got on Pinterest. I mean, being in silence and observing nature can really help us withdraw inspiration from within. By the way, that idea you just thought of, that isn't stupid. In fact, if you or others think that that idea was stupid, there's a higher chance of that being your brilliant idea or your most brilliant idea. And Albert Einstein once said, and I quote him, "If an idea at first doesn't sound absurd, then there's no hope for it." I'm pretty sure he said it kind of differently, but that's what he meant. Finding our path is rewarding. It allows us to create something that we relate to. I mean, it gives us a sense of fulfillment. And it's also great not to be the jerk who rips off other people's ideas. I mean, when I started using my story and myself as my own inspiration, I wasn't afraid of letting my ideas erupt, even if it meant pouring melted chocolate over my head in order to explain why body temperature affected the way you temper your chocolate. Well, I wasn't afraid of telling people my background and being very honest about how terrible of a cook my mother was. Therefore, I didn't have a romantic story to tell people on how I started cooking and why I started cooking. I wasn't afraid of doing my recipes that would take a long time and not just like 3 minutes like most of them on the internet. Some of my recipes will take 3 days. Croissant, good croissant if you're wondering. Well, I wasn't afraid of using my miniature collection to help me tell a story, so I decided to animate them in stop motion. And because I couldn't afford a new second camera at the time, I also decided that I was going to become very inventive with my takes. So by creating optical illusions with a camera and by having my camera inside a sugar jar and my cabinet door, or by creating a very, very colorful and vibrant art direction in my kitchen to distract from the fact that I didn't have a second camera to cut my takes to. So my lack of equipment, my lack of resources helped me build my visual identity. I embraced my lack of equipment, my lack of British accent, and created what now is considered one of the most authentic cooking shows on TV and online. The one where I get inspired by my own random interests in order to create a dessert, like my obsession for people who don't know what to do with their hands socially. Some people are so self-aware of their hands that they kind of think about it all the time. So I came up with that dessert so they don't have to think about it. A whole new meaning to their hands. They can just hold the cone. Well, theoretically, all of my ideas, I mean, they had everything to go wrong. But because it was genuine, it went right. My truth built my career. I now have my own production company in New York City. I produce cooking shows for major television channels and YouTube, including my own. I have a best-selling cookbook. I'm developing my line of kitchenware. I make ads for multi-billion-dollar brands. And you know what I hear on most of my briefing meetings? Raiza, we just want you to be you. And they know where they're getting into. I mean, I'm smoking an asparagus there, all for the vegetables. I have established myself as the weirdo that I am, and so can you. I mean, I don't want to sound like a coach, because I feel like sometimes they're the first one to try to ruin your true identity and erase your personal story, but you have to believe in your ideas, because none of them are stupid, none. You just have to find an outlet, and they will make sense. I mean, people are not born creative, and that's something, if you've ever heard that, that's a myth. People are not born creative. Creativity is something that you can develop, and everyone is capable of that. Creativity is like a state of mind. It's the capacity that one has to see beyond the obvious. And by exercising your critical sense, you can develop and awaken your creativity. Keep in mind that we are a collection of the good and the bad things we've been through life. The song Mother by John Lennon, to me, one of the deepest, most profound songs ever written. It wouldn't have been made if John Lennon actually had a mother. Or the painting Self-Portrait with Bandaged Ear by Van Gogh wouldn't have been painted if Van Gogh didn't cut his ear off. I mean, life is tragic and happy and all, and that's okay. And in order to accept that, we have to accept ourselves, and then we can become our own inspiration. I mean, we don't have to emulate other people's stories of success to succeed. We can be our inspiration. And, well, I might not be Fred Rogers, but there is no one in this world, I might not be Fred Rogers, but since you were born, I can tell you that there's not anyone like you in this whole world. There will never be anyone like you, exactly like you in this world, and people can like you exactly as you are. So thank you.